You don't have a favorite wall?
I've never considered it. I mean, look, favorite color, favorite food, favorite dinosaur. No one ever asked me what my favorite wall was.
Now we have 3 questions for you.
Is the first one favorite wall? Because I don't have one.
That one. Yeah.
Well, we know it's not sugar walls.
My favorite walls are
sugar
variety. I love sugar walls. Hey, welcome back to another episode of 1980s Now, a weekly examination of the importance of 1980s pop culture and its influence right now, today. Hey, my name is Will, and joining me, as always, are my friends and co-hosts, Kat, sitting in front of her favorite wall, and John, sitting in front of all of his favorite collectibles, items.
Favorite everythings.
Hello, friends and co-hosts, so aptly named.
And I'm looking at 2 of my favorite people.
Oh, that's sweet of you, right? And I like you guys too. Hey, my name is Will. Hey, on today's, before I forget about that, listen to one of Kat's favorite people, John, on his very own podcast, Gen X Grown Up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you.
Right, okay. Hey, on today's show, we're going to talk about a number of things. I'm going to say it this way so it doesn't sound like people don't tune out. Hey, on today's show, we're going to be talking about a number of current news stories related to 1980s media, including there's a new Garfield movie coming with a familiar voice actor. Oh, boy. The Highlander reboot is finally underway. Warwick Davis is embarrassed by the fate of Willow on Disney Plus, and Warner Brothers reverses its course on the Coyote versus ACME film that I didn't know about until I learned that there was going to be one and wasn't going to be one. But
today years old. Yep.
And then later on, I'm going to give you an update on the status of my novel Outcastes, which I've been working on furiously here in between our regular episodes, I guess. And along those lines, I want to tell you about a particular aspect. Well, 2 different things that got me sort of challenged last time we talked about it. A couple of roadblocks and how the things I've learned in connection with those, which one in particular is directly tied to some events from the 1980s.
That's appropriate.
And that's that.
Cool.
All right. Hey, no need to delay. Let's jump right into it and get caught up on 1980s news. We've delayed enough behind the scenes talking about Kat's purple wall and me having a heart attack.
Purple wall.
Yeah.
Love it. I could go on about my purple wall, but go ahead, Will.
Oh, I can't imagine there's more to say.
She has a favorite wall, and she has more talking points on it, too.
I do.
We got to see her notes on that at the end of the show. Hang on. I got something I want to add about the wall.
Flip.
Hey, this week in 1980s news, Jim. So, just as a little recap from our childhood here first. Jim Davis's long-running comic strip Garfield was first adapted into animated form in 1980 for the special The Fantastic Funnies, but he's probably first reached a wider audience. Certainly not probably. Factually, he reached a wider audience in 1982 with the television movie Here Comes Garfield, which aired along a rebroadcast of Peanuts. It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. What a lead in or lead out? What's the opposite of a lead in, John? Lead out? I don't. Is there an opposite of a lead out?
I don't know if the lead out matters, but
I guess it doesn't.
It's together in a block.
That animation block was viewed apparently by 50 million people at the time, which is, I don't think we get that anymore. There's no single television block of shows or a single show that's pulling that anymore, right? I don't think. Not in a live viewing.
No, I mean, only the Super Bowl comes even close, and it doesn't have the draw that it used to, really, because I can watch anything else anywhere else at the same time. It's not like, it used to be everything shut down when a big event like that happened. Nobody else is doing anything. And now, I can go rewatch Suits if I want to during the Super Bowl. It's not like it's not on,
Right. Yep. And I would, because I don't watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there you go. It's just such a different time. So I mentioned it ran with the Peanuts cartoon, which it was a rebroadcast of it from the 80s because I think it originally aired like in 1966, The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. But
the Peanuts,
curiously, just as an aside, while Davis was in the studio working on how to convincingly depict an animated Garfield dancing in this show, because in the comics, the cat always walked on 4 feet. But now suddenly he's got this shot at making this animated special. He's got to dance. It turns out that in the same studio was legendary Peanuts creator Charles Schulz. So he redrew Davis's work to sort of guide him, advising him that, quote, the problem is you've made Garfield's feet too small, like tiny cat feet. So we may have Charles Schulz, a creator of Peanuts, to thank for Garfield's sort of oversized feet. I was going to say boats.
Pause.
But, pause. There you go.
Did you say
Boat. I was
boots?
going to say boats.
Why would you say pause?
I was trying to think of a... Well, this is literally what happened. What other people, like some people refer to like their feet, like they say dogs. My dogs are barking.
My dogs.
But then I was like, it's not going to make sense if I say dogs when I'm talking about a cat. That's going to be really confusing. What else do people call feet? I think I heard someone say something about their boats. Maybe, I don't know. John, I don't know.
Well, I have a friend who calls my husband's shoes like canoes because they're huge.
See there, maybe if you have,
size 15.
Well, yeah,
that's
if you have big feet, maybe then.
There you go.
My getaway biscuits are
What? Wait, my what?
His
My
getaway
biscuits?
Yeah, everybody. You don't know that old saying? That old adage?
Getaway biscuits?
It doesn't even mean what you think it means, Kat.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think it means.
It's like a pot pie a day. It's just normal, common
Right, exactly.
nomenclature.
Mhm. Garfield was adapted into 11 more television series, 9 of which aired in the 1980s alone.
And never again.
Nope. They put that cat down. Later in the decade, though, Garfield and Friends aired on CBS as part of its Saturday morning children's lineup. I mean, just a great, wonderful time to be able to watch Saturday morning cartoons. But this particular one aired from September of 88 through December of 1994. Now, Lorenzo Music, whose his first voice acting credit was as Carlton, the unseen doorman on Rhoda. Do you remember that? Are we all
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's ringing a bell.
This is Carlton, your doorman.
I never saw him, but he actually voiced Garfield until his death in 2001.
That is the same voice. Oh, my goodness. That's
And he
epiphany.
did a number
That's
of
great.
cartoon characters throughout the 1980s. Most interestingly to me is he voiced, all right, check this out, right? He voiced Peter Venkman on The Real Ghostbusters
Yes.
instead of Bill Murray.
Yeah, I can hear him on that show. That like the timbre of that voice, the Garfieldy sound. Yep, I can hear it.
Now, when they ultimately make CGI, animated versions of Garfield later in the 2000s, Lorenzo Music's no longer with us. Who do they get to voice Garfield?
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, yeah. That's kind of a turn of or twist of fate, right? It's interesting, yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's kind
I
of
would
amazing.
think that Lorenzo Music was chosen to do Venkman because they thought he had some kind of similar sort of quality to Bill Murray. And Bill Murray was chosen because he had similar quality to Lorenzo Music. But it turns out Bill Murray, the way the legend goes, is he only accepted the contract to do Garfield film because it was written and maybe directed by a man named Joel Cohen, Cohen. And he thought he was going to work for the legendary a lot, Cohen brothers, which include Joel and Ethan Cohen,
Oh my gosh.
Coen. That's how the story goes. That's the story. I don't know if it's true.
Seriously?
Yes. Now you're all caught up on all things Garfield. We'll get you to bring it to today, because Sony Pictures Animation has released a trailer for the Garfield movie, the latest animated feature based on the lasagna-loving cat. This time, the titular cat is voiced by none other than Chris Pratt. I mean, again with this guy?
Can we just have him not do something? He doesn't have to be everybody. He can just be somebody in some things.
And he's not hired because, look, he's not hired because he has any connection to Mario, for example.
Right.
And that was fine. He's not hired because he has any kind of connection to, I think, the vibe of Garfield as, as it was represented in the cartoons, or the sound of Lorenzo Music, this kind of very, what's the word? Not laissez-faire.
Somber?
I know what
Kind
you
of,
somber, sort of
subdued.
Yeah.
Subdued is a good word.
Apathetic.
That's the word I'm thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
That works too.
Right? So here's a clip of Chris Pratt from the trailer. You let me know if you think this sounds any different than Andy Dwyer, the Emmett from the Lego movie, Mario,
Star-Lord.
Jurassic Park, anything. Here we
Pick
go.
one. Yeah.
I apologize in advance. The eating you're about to see will not be pretty. And if you have young children, this would be a good time for them to leave the room.
I think that's a scene from Parks and Recreation.
Yeah.
Pretty sure, yeah.
Oh, that's the game I should
He
have played.
might even be at the shoe shine stand, in fact. It's early Chris Pratt.
That's the game I should have played. Yeah, that would have been a good one. Yeah, that's a good idea. Anyway, so look, I thought to myself, this is the first thought I had. Why does he have to do everything? But it turns out I wasn't the first person to ask this question, because in 2021, writing for the Daily Beast, Laura Bradley asked, why the hell is Chris Pratt voicing every animated character? Now, to his credit, Bradley writes that Pratt is, quote, a human being capable of speech.
Well, so am I. They're not casting me.
Well, that's exactly her point. That's his only qualification. She then concludes that no one has a, quote, bigger Odie energy than Pratt.
Right. He's not Garfield-y.
Of course, we'll remind you that Odie doesn't speak.
So let's choose him. Right. Oh, let's choose him for that then. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, one of our listeners,
Yeah.
one of our faithful listeners, Nathan, posted on Facebook, why has no one hired Judge Reinhold to voice Garfield?
He's got an apathetic vibe if he wants one.
That is true. I do like that casting choice. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know why? He's not young enough is the bottom line, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I thought Bill Murray was a surprising choice at the time.
Yes.
Because he was different enough from music, the original guy. However, Bill Murray acted when he was being Garfield. He acted a little more subdued and a little more apathetic and morose and unaffected, right? Just not interested in the outside world, which Bill Murray can do. We know he can do already. That's in his range. But when I listen to this trailer and Pratt, it's just like you said, it's just, hey, how's it going, Andy Dwyer? You know, he's just being goofball Chris Pratt, and that's not Garfield.
It's a mismatch. Yeah.
Pratt is joined by Samuel L. Jackson, Nicholas Hoult, Hannah Waddingham, Cecily Strong, Ving Rhames, Brett Goldstein, and Bowen Yang. Oh, you've got two Ted Lasso folks in there, Brett Goldstein and Hannah Waddingham. That's pretty
I'm so excited to hear them. Like, I'm not necessarily excited about the movie, but I'm going to have fun picking them out.
Another 1980s news. Per Deadline, the Highlander reboot is officially moving forward. There's not a whole lot to say about this, except I'm surprised it actually is happening. I think this was one on our list of whatever happened to these movies that we were told were coming. So I'm actually surprised it's moving forward at all. But, you know, there's some encouraging things about this. And, you know, like most of these things, we're just going to have to maintain a wait and see attitude, I think. But John Wick director Chad Stahelski said, has been discussing this reboot and his passion for this film for a long time now. But now Deadline's confirmed that the project is officially on. They also confirmed that Henry Cavill of Superman, the DCU recent to Superman anyway, he's no longer Superman. He was previously rumored to be taking on this role, and now he actually is in fact set to star. Of course, the original 1986 film starred Christopher Lambert, Sean Connery, and Clancy Brown, and explored this world in which immortals were hunting one and each other down.
Are you talking about the Highlander still?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. My God. You notice how they're not making Death Wish movies anymore, right?
Huh. That's, well, yes.
Okay.
Not technically.
You notice
they're making Death Wish
right.
movies. Death Wishish.
There's a style of movie from the late 70s, early to mid 80s.
Yeah.
There's several of them, you know, like the big Rambo beefcake superhero, the lone wolf, that's the Highlander thing, you know, who's out, he's above everything. It's, you know, it's what every loner kid wants to be is, I'm actually a Highlander. That's why I have a giant. So, you know, it's almost like a subgenre of these adventure movies that I feel like we've grown out of. There's some things like the Fall Guy and Ghostbusters and whatever, they're kind of timeless. But those kind of like hyper masculine, uber bravado outside of the system loner guys, Cobra, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if the world wants that still anymore. I know people love the Highlander nostalgically. I'm not sure they would like a brand new something in that vein if it didn't have the nostalgia attached. Am I off base here?
Oh, I think you're onto something. Maybe they're going to twist it like the Fall Guy. Oh, no. Maybe it won't be macho.
He's going to be a lovable scamp.
He's a sensitive Highlander. I don't really want to cut your head off.
Maybe there can be two.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Well, you know, it's funny you say that because I was with Fall Guy being back. Now, again, your point being that maybe it's just because nostalgia, they're using that brand. But I was also thinking about the Ghostbusters because that, and then Highlander, reminded me of David Sirota's book, Back to Our Future, in which David writes, and we talked to him about this a long time ago now, it seems like, but about that during the 1980s, there was this distrust of government. And so we had a number of TV shows and films where people, regular individuals, were taking it upon themselves to do what otherwise they would rely on the police and, government agencies, including, and he throws the Ghostbusters in there. That's a non-governmental agency that has to save the world from, these supernatural things. Yeah. Highlander's not saving us. He's just kind of competing to be, all powerful. But but based on those other two films, and Fall Guy I would put in that regard too, because he was helping, as we mentioned, solve crimes and save people, like The Equalizer, like The A-Team.
Knight Rider.
I was wondering if there is an appetite for that kind of thing now, and what that says about our feelings now about the government. Because in the 80s, again, this is coming post-Watergate, post-Vietnam, that, we had sort of an inclination to be suspicious. Now, of course, conspiracy theories make, there's a certain bullshit narrative that makes you definitely should distrust the government. And that I don't buy into. Yeah. But I wonder if that's in part fueling an interest in these films. Maybe Highlander's part of that, like, contrary to what you're saying, John. Maybe there is.
Yeah.
And along those lines, the same people that believe the bullshit are for the machismo stuff. Like, they'll hate it if they do Cat suggestion about maybe there can be only two.
Right. Water it down. Yeah. You can take my Highlander sword when you pry it out of my cold dead hand.
Yeah, right. Okay. Challenge accepted.
Round one, fight.
Now, if you're a fan of the film, the reason Stileski claims that the project has taken so long to develop is because he says, unlike John Wick, which it carves its own path forward, this Highlander's got a number of films in a TV series that altogether creates the brand's mythology. And he has been working to honor all of it in a 2-hour movie, which I don't know how you do that.
All you have to do is just not contradict it, at least. So on the positive side, it sounds like it's not a reboot.
Yes. Right.
Because a reboot, that's why you reboot. You're like, all that, throw it away. We're doing our own thing. So I applaud that. I'm not sure if it's something that we still need.
Right. Yeah.
The box office shall judge me.
Yeah.
That's a sample we're going to hear in a couple of years that Will's going to play back. The box office will judge me. Da-da-da! The music on the back end.
Right. They'll have the flashback music.
Yes. Oh, I love the flashback music. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Even within the Highlander, its own, franchise, it has problems internally with its own mythology and
continuity. Yeah.
Whatever. I don't know. I really liked the first one. After that, they were terrible.
The first one is great. And then it took it a life of its own. Yeah.
But I don't know. But there is some kind of thing to that. I do like matching of genres, although I don't think it was as effective in the He-Man that we got, because I would love to have seen Attorney and all that. I do like the idea of placing a fantasy character in a modern setting, like in a modern city, like that kind of, mishmashing of sort of, different genres of films, settings, etc. I think that's kind of cool.
Splash?
No, because what would it be, a mermaid movie? I don't mean necessarily fish out of water or half fish out of water.
That's a little on the nose. It's a mythical creature in a modern setting. I thought that's what.
No. Like what I mean is like the beginning of Highlander. It's got to be the first half hour, I think, right? He is, and then it's told subsequently in flashbacks. Maybe that's more what it is. Is him in these medieval settings and different settings. So that's Conan. That's a whole other type of film. Then now we have this movie set, that dropped in New York City. It's a different film. It could be, if it wasn't for folks with swords and they just had guns, it could be some other gritty crime thriller. But they put those together, part fantasy film, part, crime drama.
Oh, so not so much a fantasy character. You just mean like the crossing of the genres, which I think you actually said that I missed. So okay,
yeah. Like aliens versus cowboys versus aliens is kind of a. Yeah, I didn't like that movie. I didn't think it was good. But
not a great example of a film, but a great example of the point you're trying to make.
Yes. There you go. In other 1980s news, and also from Deadline, Warwick Davis calls the fate of Willow #embarrassing.
Oh.
That's how you say stuff nowadays.
Hashtag.
You guys.
#facts.
We had talked about how Willow seemed canceled. And then Jonathan Kazan came forward and said, it's not canceled so much as on pause, but for contractual reasons, we have to release the actors because we don't know when we're going to start shooting again.
Right.
Well, and then earlier this year, we didn't talk about this, but Disney removed Willow and a number of dozens and dozens of other shows from their streaming network, including, I think it was their new Turner and Hooch, their new Mighty Ducks show that they had. They had some shows where they didn't air all the episodes and they just cut it.
Wow.
Stuff like that.
Why bother? It's not like putting it in the vault.
No,
you
right.
can't, or is it?
I do want to talk about that. Well, it turns out the
okay.
cuts are mostly made by, you wouldn't be surprised, right? By bean counters who weigh things like the cost of carrying that library content based on how much they have to pay residuals, participants, royalties. You've got streamers like Netflix that have to pay licensing fees to companies for movies they didn't produce themselves. And they weigh that against viewership and the particular title's ability to lure more subscribers or create less turnover. And yeah, it's just gone. And the thing about something like a Willow is, because Disney created it, it's just gone.
Gone.
When did we talk about this? Like, it had to be 4 or 5 episodes ago. We were talking about how you're at the mercy of streamers who can just take anything away from you at any time. And you had an Apple movie, Will, that you're like, well, I paid for this. I'm like, oh, here's your money back. No, I want the movie. I bought the movie. Well, you can't have that. But there's another example of it, and it's budgetary maybe for residuals or whatever, but that wasn't a problem. And look, I'm not, technology is bad. Get off my lawn. I hate the clouds kind of guy. But we have lost something.
I hate the clouds.
Old man shouts at cloud.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Perfect.
See?
That's perfect.
Cloud. Yeah, nice. Nicely done.
We have lost something because not only, first of all, there was never, to my knowledge, a Blu-ray release of Willow to go and buy. Now, they might sell one later. Who knows? Yeah. But if you didn't record it and keep it on your TiVo or use some other nefarious means to get it yourself, you just don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
But you paid for the subscription to get it, and you thought, well, now I own it. Now I can watch it when I want. Or maybe they're up to episode 6 and they're about to watch 7. Nope, it's all gone because they thought they had it.
Because
You're at the mercy of this. You pay them. You think they're the stewards of your media, and really they're the gatekeepers of your media.
Oh, man.
You just don't know.
That's an article right there. Yeah, and to your point, even if it was on Blu-ray, I've moved away from that technology because I had faith in this digital era.
Right,
so
exactly.
I got a Blu-ray player now and start that library again? I just downsized all that stuff.
I never owned a Blu-ray player ever, and now that this is the only way you can get physical. I own Blu-rays just to make sure I own the movie.
Yeah.
But I don't have a way to play it. It's just like security. Like if I need to get a Blu-ray player, I'll go find one on eBay.
Yeah.
Armageddon. 2 things. We got to get food. 3 things. Water. What was the third one?
Water.
Oh, Blu-ray. Right. He's like, all right, I'm going out there.
I got to watch some Wreck-It Ralph when I'm in lockdown.
Honey, if I'm not back in 30 minutes, just write me off. It means I didn't find the Blu-ray.
And he leaves their house. Well, Willow star Warwick Davis is not happy. Just like us, he's not happy about the removal of the Disney Plus fantasy adventure series. He wrote on Twitter, quote, I meet lovely people on a daily basis who are fans of Willow, who are the reason the Disney Plus series was made. Please tell me, at Walt Disney Co., he tagged him in it, what do I say to these subscribers when they ask why they can't watch the series anymore? #embarrassing.
Tagging Disney is like the modern equivalent of now what you going to do?
Right.
I know you saw it. What are you going to do?
Yeah, and I like Warwick Davis a lot more than I like, let's say, the corporation of Disney.
That's right. Yeah.
And I like Disney.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the show. I would absolutely watch another seation.
So on a related note, and pulling together our love of some old animated characters and this concept of, I guess disappearing media that we might otherwise enjoy. As reported by The Hollywood Reporter, Warner Brothers reverses course on Coyote versus ACME. So I didn't know about this until they reversed course, but earlier this year, The Hollywood Reporter broke the news that this film would become Warner's 3rd already shot film to get shelved after previously nixing nearly completed projects Batgirl and Scoob Holiday Haunt in August of 2022. Now, first of all, just as an aside, I was disappointed when Batgirl got shelved. I had hopes for that. That was a film in which Michael Keaton was, once again, to reprise his role as Batman / Bruce Wayne as a mentor.
Yeah.
There's all this. Brendan Fraser plays the bad guy. There was a lot of things going for it.
Right.
Never going to see it. That pissed me off. But I didn't know there was even going to be a Scoob Holiday Haunt. I liked the other Scoob that they did. That was really good.
The first one. It was cute. Yeah. Inoffensive.
Fucking Warner Brothers.
Cute and
Anyway, the Coyote.
Cute and inoffensive is what I was. No, those would not match so much. It was cute and I was offended. No.
Did you watch that, John? They had, what's his name? They had the other character in there. It was him and Dino Mutt. It was, right? It was Dino Mutt and who's Dino Mutt's guy? It's,
Hawkman?
It's not
No.
Hawkman, but it's like that's like
No, something else.
Falcon or
Yeah, Falcon. Yeah. The guy with like the yellow beak as a shield
Yeah.
over his eyes, all
That
white
was-
suit. Yeah.
that was cool. Another Warner Brothers character, and that was really awesome. Another Saturday morning favorite of mine.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this
Coming
particular cancellation, the Coyote versus ACME film, roiled the creative community perhaps even harder than those other two because those had been positioned as one-off change in strategy, never to happen again. But according to sources, after the Coyote versus ACME news broke last week, several filmmakers instructed their reps to cancel meetings that they had on the books with Warner Brothers. Good for them.
Yeah.
Because you could be next.
Yeah.
So it occurred to me, you guys both said a second ago that you weren't aware of this film until it was canceled.
Yeah.
Nope.
It is the most literal interpretation ever of don't know what it got till it's gone.
Oh, right.
You don't know what you've got.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're right. That is the most
Till
literal.
it's
You're
gone.
right.
The most literal. Usually it's
That's
like you did
true.
have it, didn't realize it. You
Right.
literally didn't have it, but
didn't
now
have
you
it.
know about it. It's gone. That's
Right.
the thing.
It's not that we didn't appreciate it. We didn't know about it. Yeah, John, that's good.
That's
Now you do.
tight.
And it's gone.
Yep. Super tight there.
Yeah. Now, while Batgirl was when it was shown, the narrative emerged that it was axed because it didn't do very good. The test screenings. And I'm trying to remember, it's Peter Safran, I think, of the film, who took over, he and James Gunn took over the DC universe for Warner Brothers, said that the film wasn't quote, releasable. Now, other folks have seen it, said they don't know what he's talking about. And everybody, sort of agreed that this was just instead intended to be a tax write-off, that they'd make more money or save more money by writing it off than spending all the money that would be necessary to promote it and get an audience in there to make their investment back.
That's astonishing to me.
I wonder if they're changed their mind and their rating scale about what's releasable post Quantumania, because that was unreleasable.
I still haven't seen.
You guess you wish Marvel would have some of the same restraint.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
But unlike Batgirl and those, at least as a story that the publicist spun about it, Coyote versus ACME was actually fully completed, which they said Batgirl still needed some work, and it tested multiple times in the 90s, which is a score that's akin to Academy Award winning films. And folks that saw it couldn't conceive of a reason why it wouldn't be released. Director David Green's industry friends mobilized to prevent that kind of messaging. Again, that it was too poor to be shown in theaters, from tainting the reputation of the film. And now the studio will allow director Dave Green to shop his live action animation hybrid movie to other potential buyers instead of just shelving it for the tax write-off.
Good.
So again, he's going to have, so it's Warner Brothers produced, they partly were helped get the money together and all that, but he's going to have to find someone else to distribute it. They don't want any part of that.
They don't want to.
They don't want to invest the money in the marketing
Well,
and
good.
distribution.
Let someone else make the mint that is available off of that film.
Yeah.
I had first heard about it, I guess. I wasn't following it closely, but I remember reading about it some years ago because they made the comparison to Roger Rabbit, because this is combination of live action and animation, and like the worlds are blended somehow. And then it made me furious to hear this news. Like, it reminded me it existed. And then I saw these leaked stills and I'm like, that's going to be great. So nothing better could happen to Warner Brothers than to go, we don't want to do it, shop it out, and someone else make a killing on it and build a franchise. And there you go.
Yeah.
I also think about the creatives. Like, I just do goofy internet videos and podcasts. But if I do something and somebody says, no, we're not going to let anybody see the work you put into this.
Yeah.
Think of all the people that work on a motion picture.
Yeah.
It's not just that crew. It's not just the actors. It's all the effects people and everybody that put blood, sweat, and tears into that. And it was done and good. It's just reprehensible to pull it for that kind of a reason. So I'm glad that people took a stand against them.
And like anybody creating anything, their goal is that it's seen, not necessarily that they make money or that it's, well received. That's someone else's concern. As an artist, it's
all happy side effects. Right.
Yeah. I want to just be able to hang that art on the wall. Yeah. That's,
I'm happy to hear you say Roger Rabbit, John. That was one of my favorite movies after it came out. I loved that. So yeah, anything in that style.
It was being positioned as comparable from what I had heard in terms of
Awesome.
what they were aiming for, right? I don't know how they delivered on it. Obviously, this was some time ago, but that's what had me excited about it. So I was,
I think I read that Amazon is the front runner, or believed to be the front runner right now to get it.
Okay.
Now, interestingly, the Hollywood Reporter points out that the plot of Coyote versus ACME follows the speechless ever determined Wile E. Coyote as he teams up with a lawyer to fight the big Acme corporation. And just like in the cartoons, Coyote buys these Acme devices to try to kill Roadrunner, but they never work properly. They often explode. So he's going to sue them. So
funny.
Hollywood Reporter puts it this way, saying the third shelved Warner's movie, in other words, is the story of an underdog taking on a heartless company whose executives don't realize there can be real consequences to making their products blow up in your face.
Perfect.
Interesting.
Perfect.
Which is the story of this film, it seems. Now, in related news, Variety reports that Congressman Joaquin Castro has taken to Twitter to call out Warner Brothers Discovery for planning to shelve the completed film for the sake of receiving a $30 million tax break. He wrote, the Warner Brothers tactic of scrapping fully made films for tax breaks is predatory and anti-competitive. As the Justice Department and FTC revise their antitrust guidelines, they should review this conduct, end quote.
Whoa.
The Texas Democrat concluded his message by saying, quote, as someone remarked, it's like burning down a building for the insurance money, end quote.
Oh.
So that frowned upon now? I guess it must be.
Yeah. It's 2023, John. You're so 2022.
Yeah. Come on, get woke, John.
Yeah. Get woke, go broke. So, this whole thing that we're talking about in the last few stories here, and John even reminding us about the conversation about digital stuff. Once it's gone, we don't,
Right.
We don't have access to it anymore. It reminded me of films that I've been trying to find, films that I've loved from the 1980s that I've wanted to share with my kids, but haven't been able to because they're not available digitally. And in some instances, the media that they're only were ever created on doesn't exist anymore. It's like a CED disc, from the early 1980s or something. I'm talking pre-laser disc. Anyway, this got me thinking that once again, it's time to play.
Listen, you smell something?
All right, I got a number of movies here. I'm going to make this real easy for you, though.
I'm so excited.
I'm going to give you 5. I'm just going to give you the synopsis that is off of IMDb of the film. And you tell me which of these surprising 1980s movies, one from the 1970s, is not available digitally. And again, in some instances, they're not available in HD at all. So they're not on Blu-ray, nothing. You got to go find an old VHS or beta tape or laser disc to watch these things.
Okay.
Wow.
Where's my Madonna record thing?
Yep.
All right.
Where's your coaster?
Call Madonna or Cork Cat.
Madonna.
All right, you got it.
All right.
All right, in this film, a civilian diving team is enlisted to search for a lost nuclear submarine and faces danger while encountering an alien aquatic species.
What am I supposed to do now? Guess the movie?
No, I'm wondering what John's favorite wall is in his place.
It's purple.
I don't know what this is.
John, do you know?
Sounds like a movie John would know, though. Yeah.
What's the Abyss? But
That's right.
Oh. Hey, nice.
Yeah. What?
what else you got to say? Is there a part 2? Like, is it available though? Is that
no? These are not available. All these films are not available for streaming. No.
Get out of town.
And we've been told for months now, for a while, for years, and now recently months, that The Abyss is coming to 4K, UHD, all that stuff. But it's yet to be released. Now, most recently, Cameron said, any day now, it's out of my hands. He said, I've done all I need to do. I've remastered it, all that stuff. I've had I gave them bonus content. It's coming. So finally, it seems like we're going to get some sort of a hard copy version of it. And then presumably it'll be available to stream. It's not available to stream in the United States. And maybe it's available other places now, but
even the nature of this game, you stumped me because I thought we were going to pick which ones were not available. And they're all not available?
Yes.
As soon as you said, I'm like, sounds like Abyss to me. Well, I know that one's available just because it's such a movie, Dang.
not stream it.
Got me.
I thought we were choosing, is it available or not or whatever.
All right, John, this one's for you. This is another 1980s film that's not available to be streamed. At least when I last checked. If it's available now,
you're not culpable.
No, they're not available. When a group of trespassing seniors swim in a pool containing alien pods, they find themselves energized with youthful vigor.
Oh.
Cocoon.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, that Ron Howard film from 1985 is not available.
Yeah. Wow.
A Ron Howard film.
That's crazy.
You just did James Cameron, and now Ron Howard is like, it's not like these are little films that don't warrant a release, you know?
Now, I'll tell you,
not.
Kat, you get this next one here, and I'm going to tell you, this one's obscure. I'm curious if you guys have seen this film. It's one of my favorite films from the 1980s.
This is probably the one I know.
And this is the one that kicked off for me this hunt, because I was been looking for this film for years and waiting for it to come out. I don't understand why it's not available. We could talk about that in a moment. This is, here's your summary of the film. In a small American town, a diabolical circus and a demonic proprietor prey on the townsfolk.
Oh my. Nope. Got nothing.
Prey upon the townsfolk.
Yeah.
Can you read it one more time?
These
Just
are
in case?
IMDb descriptions. I don't know that.
All right.
And I didn't tweak them at all. In a small American town, a diabolical circus, I would say carnival probably, and its demonic proprietor prey on the townsfolk.
Why do you want to show this to your kids?
I want to tell you what the movie is. Maybe you'll understand, or maybe you won't because you don't know what it is.
I can't identify it from that description.
Okay. It's Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Oh.
From 1983. I believe it's a Disney
Because I've
movie,
never
actually.
seen it. Then I got it.
Okay. Directed by Jack Clayton.
That's why.
Oh my God. It's so good. It's got Jason Robards in it. Jonathan Pryce plays the bad guy. It is so creepy and wonderful. I saw it when I was, young. It came out in 83. I probably saw it when it came out. So I was like 12 or so. It was just scary enough for kids and just creepy enough. I don't know if it would hold up today, but also just clever and dark and moving enough for adults, I think. Anyway, that's why I've been wanting to show my kids, because I feel like it's a good entree into horror movies kind of thing, or scarier things.
Yeah.
Great film. All right, John, this one's up for you. This is another 1980s film that's not available for streaming. A wide variety of eccentric competitors participate in a wild and illegal cross-country race.
Cannonball Run?
What?
That's right.
I could have gotten that one for sure. Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness. Captain Chaos.
Directed by former stuntman Hal Needham, or stuntman turned director Hal Needham. Yeah, this 1981 film, again,
Not available?
Not available for streaming.
Oh, my gosh.
All right, Kat, this is the last one here. This one's for you. I had 5, so it's not really even, but doesn't matter. We're not keeping score.
We can share
This one is
though.
the one that came out in the 1970s, in the late 1970s.
Okay.
I think you'll get it. During an escalating zombie epidemic, 2 Philadelphia SWAT team members, a traffic reporter and his TV executive girlfriend, seek refuge in a secluded shopping mall.
Oh. I just watched it, didn't I? Wait,
I don't know.
which one
I don't
was
know
this?
if you did. I honestly don't know if you did.
No, I did. Okay. It's not Night of the Living Dead. It's the next one, right? No, wait. Oh gosh. Is it the third one? Oh no.
How many did you watch? You went
Day
from
and the
0 to
Dawn.
all of them?
I watched Night of the Living Dead.
She's doing her
and then
homework.
I also watched Day of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead, but now I forget
The
which
order.
Yes, I'm trying to
Well,
remember.
it goes in the order in which life happens. Like the world really happens. So after night.
Oh, so it's Dawn.
That's right.
There we go.
Yay!
We just had a teacher about science. Yeah, and along with those films, there's a number of films from different decades that are not available. I focused on the 1980s one. Here's some other ones that are surprisingly not available for streaming. Wall Street, Mask, not The Mask, Mask, with Eric Stoltz and Cher based on a true story.
yeah.
Silkwood, another biopic or another story that's based on a true story with Meryl Streep. If you wonder why, as documented by GQ in 2019, screenwriter John August actually set out to figure out why this was the case, because he wasn't able to find films that he liked. And he had actually a friend of Ron Howard and reached out to him to ask about Cocoon. And at least at the time of this article, he said that Ron never responded.
Oh, okay.
But the answer is probably
That's a message.
not terribly surprising and semi-straightforward and additionally confounding. For one, yeah, but certainly John's indicating it comes down to money. That's certainly in part.
Yeah.
But it's also what you said earlier in connection with the money. When you talk about the bean count, we talked about the bean counters kicking stuff off of or getting rid of content. There's so many choices now. Here's the first reason. There's so many choices now. They don't need to bring these in. How much more is a Cannibal? I think Cannibal Run would be an argument. Is a good poll for that. Maybe
Love that.
Maybe even as a block of 80s films, this is a good poll, a good draw for somebody.
Cocoon. I never wanted to watch Cocoon more than when I turned 50. So there's hope for my knees. This is great.
Yeah. But the fact that there's a lot of competition, and in particular, we're thinking about Amazon, Apple, Netflix, who are creating their own content, even Disney creating their own content. Do I really need this old stuff? That kind of thing. But the other part of it is, August says, is in almost all cases the issue is of the rights. In particular, figuring out who has them. He says obtaining and purchasing rights to stream a title, thus giving its makers more money, sounds easier than it is. Sorting through who controls which rights and where they might be today, especially if the company is now defunct, can get complicated. And throw on top of that, we've seen this happen before. If at the time they didn't have the licensing for the music that was included in it. This happens with TV shows. Oh, man. Or the home video license didn't anticipate streaming and other types of platforms. Yeah. You got a whole other challenge there.
WKRP in Cincinnati is notorious for that very problem. Because think how much it relied on music. It wasn't even on VHS or DVD forever. Yeah. I think there was some remixes or something. I don't know if it's been released at all yet, but music was the problem. Because they got the license for the music to be on the TV show, not anticipating all these decades later use. So
wasn't that a problem for moonlighting too initially? If I remember,
that's correctly. What I was thinking as well, Kat.
That sounds right.
That was part of it. I think. August suggests, quote, the way this gets solved is to pay a bunch of paralegals to go through the contracts and get this figured out. The challenge is that it's not really worth it for any one service to spend the money, as John pointed out, to get the rights to Flamingo Kid, which is also another film that's not available.
Oh. Not one of Will's favorites, but it's on the list.
Yeah, there's a lot. You'd be surprised. And again, most of them are well-known films.
Wow.
You know what's funny? This is what happened. I had this thought in connection with these articles. So I do some Googling and a list comes up. And then as a result, like for example, I see a movie on there, Sleuth from 1972, which is Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier. And I'm reading the synopsis of Sleuth because I never really knew what that was about. And I've never seen it. I read the synopsis. This is literally what happens. You guys know I'm an idiot. Wow, that sounds fascinating. I would like to watch that now. So I look up how to stream Sleuth online.
Yes.
I'm reading an article about movies that can't be streamed.
Oh my God.
It's on the list.
And there you go.
I would have done that.
I was like, oh, you can't stream this? What? That's ridiculous.
And now he doesn't care about the movie anymore. Now he's just on a crusade.
I gotta pontificate.
I know. I was thinking, can I get this on? What's the physical media I have to get this on? It may never even been put on DVD. Film from 1972. Anyway, all right. Hey, that was 1980s news. Hey, I know it doesn't sound like it because our show sounds so damn good, but we don't have a big corporate sponsor or a giant podcast network behind us. No. In fact, this show is brought to you week after week with the generosity of folks just like you, listeners who give us $1 or $2 or more every month to help us pay all the different bills associated with creating a wonderful show about the 1980s. To find out how you can support our show with $1 or $2 or the many free ways to help our show, visit 1980snow.com/support. Whatever you do, thank you so much. So, hey, all right.
Speaking about creatives, something about creatives getting their work out.
Yeah, I've got bad news, though. I was just told my book will never be published. I finished it, and now I was just told that.
By who?
Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers.
Netflix and Warner Brothers, yeah.
Because of streaming reasons. Right?
Exactly. They said they can't stream it because it's on paper.
I got a scanner.
Yeah, right. Made no sense. But anyway, yeah. So these in between episodes, and most often, we've been catching up on where I'm at with my 1980s novel. My novel that's set in the 1980s, that's based in part on some true events and mostly made up. And I told you, I guess as a brief aside, I had some minor setbacks with regard to some of the folks I wanted to talk to and their availability. And some good news is two of the folks that have been on my list that I've been wanting to speak to, it's going to work out. So we're going to talk to them. Now, one of them is not that guy that ghosted me. I don't even know if we talked about that on here, but he's not the one.
Good. He doesn't deserve to talk to you.
But I also won't say their names in case these folks disappear too. There you go. But the other kind
disappear? What kind of book you writing? You mention people and they disappear?
Yeah. I'm going to make just like Willow, hashtag embarrassed.
Yeah. Real nice book you got there. Be a shame if something were to happen to it.
Mm-hmm. Shame if the bean counters counted your beans.
2.
The bronze shoes, baby shoes. What's coming up for me?
The bronze shoes weren't really bronze.
They still got feet in them.
Turns out you just spray painted them. The feet too. They all got spray painted. Got bronze feet in them. Nobody cares about these callbacks because they probably didn't. They don't even know what we're talking about. Anyway, so
do.
the other, well, no, we do. Of course we do. But the other setback I had was, and just for folks who may not know, so the book is set in the 1980s, and primarily the protagonist is an Indian teen who emigrates to the United States just as the story starts. And in part, we also deal with, in some flashbacks, some of the I don't know, I almost said adventures, but that makes it sound light and fun. But some of the moments in the life of his father and mother, as told in a flashback. So part of the challenge was researching, Indian culture, which I did a lot. And then, as you guys know, I've written this book slowly over years. It was mostly finished, months ago. But I even had forgotten some of my research in a sense because, I researched stuff, I documented stuff, and then I wrote. And so I came across two things that suddenly I was like, I don't know how to deal with this. And so one of them was, just to be direct, one of them has to do with the relationship of the father and mother I mentioned, because I imagine the way it's written is a kind of a Romeo and Juliet, Capulet and Montague kind of relationship where two families that would not otherwise, find a sort of common ground, have members of their families fall in love. And just a week or 2 weeks ago when I was working on the book, I spoke to, as I've done every now and then, I spoke to a woman who's of Indian descent, emigrated here. She's a little older than we are, and asked her about this concept. And I was curious about what might courtship be in the 1960s in India, and that she said it would not happen because this is her words. All marriages are arranged in India. And I was like, well, I know that, but when you say all, it's not all, right? There's room for, these. No. And she told me that if I were to write a story that had these two characters from different families get married because they fell in love, no one would believe anything else I wrote. And therefore, just what she said, therefore, don't write the book at all. So I was pretty downtrodden at that response.
Oh, and here's why we do research, kids.
Yeah. Now, and I guess not that she needs defending, but just as a sort of a aside, I suppose, I did find in 2018 a survey of more than 160,000 households of Indian households. 93% of married Indians said that theirs was an arranged marriage. And just like I spoke to this woman, she said, my parents were an arranged marriage. My in-laws were an arranged marriage. And so on and so forth. Just 3%, according to the survey, had, quote, love marriages, and another 2% described theirs as a love-cum-arranged marriage, which usually indicates that the relationship was set up by the families, but then the couple agrees to get married. So in some instances, they arrange a marriage, but that you have a choice, first right of refusal, I guess.
Okay.
You can't fire me, I quit kind of situation.
Yeah, exactly. Now,
you can't make us get married. We wanna, so it's our choice.
Right. And just to be clear, because I want to be as respectful I can as with regard to these other cultures that we're talking about, because I'm not a part of them, and and they deserve respect and honor as much as an outsider can give with the limited knowledge I have. But she made it clear to me that, and the research I show is that even though they're arranged marriages, it doesn't mean that these two folks don't fall in love. In fact, most of these marriages, these arranged marriages, the couples love each other and they're long lasting and wonderful. And this system works. Now, interestingly enough, she said to me, now, if you want to set your book in the 1980s when it was more open. So they may actually have. I was like, well, part of it's in the 1980s, but not this part.
Not the marriage part. Right. Yeah. His parents would be in the 60s.
I felt really down about this for like a day or so. But then I remembered, and I was doing some more research, and I remembered that I based these characters, certain ones of them, in part on real people, just because I didn't know enough about these things. And it turns out what I felt comfortable writing, why I felt comfortable writing about it, is because Indira Gandhi, who was the first female prime minister, certainly of India, she was the second prime minister of all because her father, Nehru, was the first prime minister after Indian independence. She married someone that she picked. Now, this gentleman named Feroz Gandhi, now her name's Indira Nehru, Feroz Gandhi, spelled Gndhy, by the way, starts courting her 10 years before they're married. And at that time, her mother says, no, she's too young. She's only 16. She's not getting married to anybody. Anyway, 10 years later, this Feroz ingratiates himself to their family. And even at that point, Indira's father is against it. Right. No, And I think there's maybe a religious difference. He's Parsi and they're Hindu, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so he's against it so much so that he asks Mahatma Gandhi to intervene. Gandhi, you got to talk to these two kids. It's driving me crazy. They want to get married. You got to talk them out of it. Gandhi meets with them, so the story goes, and says, I think you guys are going to be okay. So they do wind up getting married with Gandhi and ultimately Nehru's blessing. Another side note, by the way.
Not to mention Gandhi's blessing.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, whatever your dad
Right.
thinks,
Yeah.
Mahatma Gandhi just blessed this union. I think we could probably move ahead with it.
Yeah.
I think he blessed your book too.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, there you go.
I'm working on it. Just an interesting side note, by the way. I told you Feroz Gandhi spelled his name with a Y at the end.
Mm-hmm.
After they're married,
Yes.
Indira has them change their spelling to with an I.
Uh-huh.
And it's believed for marketing purposes because so many people loved the Mahatma
Yes.
that, she could leverage that in her own political career that she had the same.
Yeah. Optics.
just-
yeah.
Anyway,
Let
Look.
people assume. That's fine.
so there was a precedent for it, and that's actually what I had based it on, this notion. But even more than that, it took me 24 hours, maybe 36 hours to realize, well, wait a second. What I'll just do is have these, at some point, the father to this woman will say, you know what? I do like that guy. I want you to marry him for whatever reason. All right, problem solved. Now he arranged it. Anyway.
Da-ding.
So that's the hybrid marriage you're talking about, right? Where it's like it was
Yes.
arranged, but then the people actually agreed. And so it wasn't like you got to do it against your will. It's like, oh, you set this up and that ain't too bad. Sure.
Yeah, it's almost the inverse of this, what they
Almost
called
like that.
love come marriage arrangement, because that they suggest the parents arrange it, and then you get to decide, hey, I don't like his mustache. Next.
Power of veto.
So this is more the opposite. She brings a guy to her father, and he says, all right, you know what? I do approve this. In fact, let's just tell everybody I arranged it, okay? Just for my purposes. I think that's what
It's like low key asking for your parents' blessing, kinda.
Yeah. So this led me to write a chapter, actually, which
Oh.
write a chapter where the suitor winds up doing something where the father sees him in a different way, and ultimately it's like, you know what? I see what she sees in you.
Nice.
You have my approval for this,
Uh-huh.
and
Okay.
and that brings me to the next challenge I had, because I don't remember exactly how or why I was researching at this time. But anyway, again, this is based on some real events, including the fact that in the chapter that I wrote, which is, a short chapter, is set during I fudge it a little bit, of course, but during a real violent event that happened in the 1960s, late 1960s, in this area in which these characters live, Gujarat, which is a state there in India. And at the time in the 1960s, it was between Hindus and Muslims. Now, unfortunately, for decades, going to today, we still have these conflicts. Mostly it's in lower class areas where the folks are impoverished and suffering. And it's just a powder keg, So the fact that they have this maybe difference in religion is enough to find a distinction that causes sort of an outburst in violence. Unfortunately, sadly, in the 1960s, it was these two groups were competing for work at this textile mill that had opened there, essentially, because a lot of textile work is done there. And this led to several different violent clashes between these groups, which ultimately culminated in a bigger one, and hundreds of people are killed, et cetera, and so forth. And then bringing it more, so that's in my book now, and then more contemporary in my book in the 1980s is another event. And now this one instead sees a clash between the upper and lower class folks, which in part are referred to as the Dalits. And this is because, just in brief, in the beginning of the 1970s and into the 1980s, the government started having affirmative action programs for these folks. These lower class folks who there's different categories of them, but one of them is considered, they call them scheduled castes, which means they are not part of the caste system, which brings me to the point I really want to make. Anyway, the government started saying, you got to leave some jobs for these folks. You got to hire them because they're in these groups. You got to enroll them in your institutions because of, so it's affirmative action, what we would think of here, affirmative action.
So I was about to say,
Sure.
yeah, that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Well, other groups, the upper class and middle class folks resent this idea that even though these universities and jobs, they couldn't find enough people that wanted their jobs. So the percentage that was reserved for them didn't get, filled. But anyway, and before I continue, just to be clear, because I'm talking about upper class, middle class, lower class, Hindu, Muslim, different religions, different groups, all these things we're calling out. Just to be clear, I mean, don't take my shorthand or talking about specific incidents of violence or aggression between two different groups. For me, that I'm suggesting in any way that an entire population of those groups is, ill-natured or, otherwise discriminatory, racist, etc. No, these very specific incidences. So, when I talk about Hindu versus Muslim, etc., there was a particular incident that happened. And relative to the larger population of the, country of India, it's small. Because most people, just like here in America, are good-natured, loving, supportive, not racist, etc. There's just, there were these clashes again. So don't misinterpret my language. I don't mean to disparage an entire group of anybody, because within a group of, a large population, it's a small group, a minority of people that are doing bad things or otherwise have hatred towards another. And it's the same everywhere in the world, including in America and including, sadly, right now where we see these pockets of anti-Semitic, violence, or folks that can't decide which side of this Middle East conflict to support because they're, conflating a group of terrorists with an entire population. It's wrong in any regard to suggest that an entire group be represented by the bad actions of a small number of, a relatively small number of people. All right. So just to be clear, so don't misinterpret my language. I may not, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, again, we see riots that rapidly turn into, religious violence. So first they start targeting the Dalits, which are these, called the scheduled castes. And then it becomes religious in nature. And then now, once again, Muslims are being targeted. Again, it's the other, right? It's the other. Who is responsible for my suffering? It's the other people that aren't like me. Therefore, I will get them. At that time, so again, we had riots in 1981 in the same area. And then later in 1985, which is past the date when my book took place, the number of people killed in the 85 riot was estimated at somewhere between 200 and 300 folks. The police recorded 662 incidents and offenses related to caste-based violence. Yeah. 743 related to communal violence, which is other than caste-based, so it could be Hindu versus Muslim. Property damage at could now measure at $1.75 billion, which I said the Muslim community became mostly the main targets ultimately, with hundreds killed, several hundreds badly injured, 2,500 houses destroyed, and 12,000 made homeless. So it's really bad. And this still happens today.
Yeah.
In India. Yeah. And maybe I'm going too much into this, but ultimately what I want to say is, writing about this new thing got me thinking again about caste and all this thing, because I saw an article where today, not today, but present in 2023, California, there was a first-term Senator Aisha Wahab proposed a bill earlier this year to add caste to a list of protected groups in California. Which, for me was like, oh yeah, again, the sort of my novel is relevant in the sense that I'm trying to, show how these problems are everywhere. It's not just in India or Gujarat. If it were to be signed into law, California would become the first state to have this law that explicitly based on caste.
So you made a little leap there that I want to fill in the blanks and make sure I understand it.
Yeah,
that suggests there is enough of an Indian population in California that.
Yes.
That it registers on the Richter scale of, maybe I shouldn't say it about California, it registers on the scale that there is some caste discrimination going on. Is that what I'm to understand? Otherwise, why protect, right?
Right.
The first part is 100% true. After Mexicans, Indians are the second largest minority population in California. Okay. But the other part, it turns out, may not be true. This idea that there's enough of it that would require this law. Because as I started reading about this present day problem that was being raised, it made me sort of question things I had been writing about in my book set in the 1980s because of that second part that you're talking about. It turns out that this organization, and I reached out to the senator to see if she would speak with me about the law, and her office said that she's not talking about the law anymore. But they did say, hey, talk to the sponsor of the bill. They're the group that came to us advocating, saying they needed this. And it was this organization called Equity Labs, which describes itself as a Dalit civil rights organization. Remember, Dalits, I told you, are this lower caste or lower class outside of the caste system in India, and that they were the sponsors. But throughout the summer, however, and so you think, well, my first thought, as a bleeding heart liberal is, yeah, get them, Equity Labs, and protect the caste lower, the scheduled caste in our country. But throughout the summer, hundreds of people mobilized outside the state capitol to protest this law. Well, who's against discrimination?
Wait, who's against discrimination?
Who's against anti-discrimination laws?
Who's against anti-discrimination laws? Right. Yes.
Yeah. Well, again,
there are. Yeah. Well, okay. Yes. There are definitely groups. But
you might have answered your own question.
But here's the surprising part of it.
Yes.
The surprising part is that among those folks that were opposing the bill included groups like the Global Hindu Federation.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah, which was chaired by a guy named Pandit Satish K. Sharma. And I'm going to talk about him in a moment here. And the Hindu American Foundation. These two groups were arguing that the law was different than other the law was doing something that was proposing to do something different than other laws that protected, certain categories. And Suhag Shukla, I'll say, the executive director of the Hindu American Foundation, said that, quote, everyone has a race, everyone has an ancestry, everyone has a gender, everyone has an age, not everyone has a caste. End quote.
Right.
And further, since the U.S. already effectively bans this type of discrimination through other types of through other types of legislation. So you want to scooping up anti-caste, discrimination in some other laws, like ones.
So is his argument that this new bill would be superfluous then? It's not necessary because it's already kind of handled and it's
a two-part thing.
Okay.
That's the one thing you already covered. The second thing that's more troubling is that he said as a result, because it's, again, not everybody has a caste, only Indian people we're told have a caste. It serves only to stigmatize the entire community of mostly Hindus and South Asians with a broad brush. Because what they're saying is, since Indians have a caste, only Indians are going to discriminate against people with this based on caste. So therefore, Indians discriminate. And here's another reason not to like Indians would be their argument.
Whoa, what?
That's their concern.
Here's the thing to note. Indians, people of Indian descent, are damn people. People have that behavior against other people, regardless of...
Yes.
And talking about paint with a broad brush, humans are the worst sometimes. It's not just from that region of the world. But
except how would you know who, so this, you're a hiring guy at a work. How do you know someone's caste?
Well, that's perfect. If I don't know about it, I cannot discriminate against it.
Exactly.
But for those who do recognize it, maybe there needs to be some protection. I don't know. I have not read the bill. I'm not informed about it. But just on a pure humanitarian stance, if people are being marginalized and trivialized, sometimes they need some help.
Yes. But his argument is only the Indian manager is going to know if this person is even of a certain caste. Therefore, it's Indians that are doing that discrimination. So like when you said all humans can be awful, yes, asterisk, but Indians, also Indians specifically. Let's make sure we know those Indians.
Right. In this column, they're the only ones that can do that thing. I hear you.
Yes. Yeah. So there's only one race singled out as being able to do this one offensive thing is what he's saying.
Right.
So you add that to the fact that this is superfluous. And it turns out no one's really doing this in vast numbers of any kind as far as they could tell or any really legitimate. So Gavin Newsom in October vetoed the bill, which agreed in the sense that he said there was already laws in effect that protect folks against this type of discrimination. But digging deeper into this, it turns out this Equity Labs may not be a beneficial organization. Look, now here's where we take this with a big grain of salt, because this guy that I'm about to tell you about brings up stuff like critical race theory and George Soros blames George Soros for certain things. So already he's in a certain category. But he pointed out certain things that seem maybe to be believed. In fact, including the fact that one of the women who's sort of the spokesperson, I guess you'd say, for this organization, certainly one of the faces of it, claims to be a Dalit herself. But he points out, but she was born in America. So technically she could never be a Dalit because Dalits are folks who are born of a certain low class, in India. So if you're born into, let's say, a poor family in America, it doesn't mean you're a Dalit. It means you're, maybe there's other types of discrimination or challenges you have. So that's one thing he said. He also, again, traces the money and raises some questions about it. Ultimately, he thinks that there's Muslims behind this that are just trying to make Hindus and Indians look bad. Now, that seems, look, except for the George Soros stuff and the other thing I mentioned, I don't know. He makes a convincing argument based on what I read about this organization that there's something else going on here, especially when they were proposing a solution where there wasn't a problem.
I get that. What keeps nagging at me is this category of Dalit is an arbitrary label based on inheriting the sins of your parents. They were, therefore you are. Mm. And now, if you're born in America, you can't even be in that club. So even that club is exclusionary. It's not that someone wants to be in that, negative connotated group.
Right.
But
yeah.
The point is, why are you labeling them in the first place in the modern era? What's the reason for saying, well, you were born this side of the tracks, therefore you are this kind of person?
Yeah.
Right.
Geography and who my parents are don't have a bearing on who I'm going to be. Now they can influence me through nurture, right? Not nature. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it implies that nature overrides the nurture and you're going to be that kind of person. Therefore we label you that.
Yes.
Ruffles my feathers, gets my dander up.
Well, yeah. And John, you're raising some of the some of the points that came up when I was researching the history of how we got to this point in India with this idea of caste and Dalit. Because reading that there was even a controversy over this law, which I thought would be like you were saying originally, it's uncontroversial, right? Folks need protecting, let's protect them. But reading that there was a controversy had me then read this book that this guy that I told you about, Pandit Satish K. Sharma wrote, called Caste Conversion, a Colonial Conspiracy, to learn what his perspective was and find out again, because I told you guys a couple episodes ago, I knew caste wasn't an Indian notion entirely. It wasn't indigenous to India. It was imposed. I remember reading that.
You're reading a book and going deep. And I said, this all started because Will wanted to watch The Abyss. And now here we are.
Yes, exactly. If Sleuth was available.
And now Indian caste system analysis and legislature. Yeah. How did we get here, right?
So I keep using this word Dalit. So Dalit, the etymological origins is that the word literally means broken, and it was adopted after Indian independence in 1947, I suppose, or sometime after the Indian independence, to refer to those people who are deemed of so low a class that they didn't rank in the so-called caste system.
Wow.
And actually, it replaced a more offensive term called untouchable. And we could talk about that in a moment, but they were called untouchables, this group of folks that were, lower class folks, born into being lower class, because they were believed that they couldn't literally be touched. You couldn't literally touch them without sort of just getting their sort of poisoned in a sense where you needed a ritual cleansing.
They're unclean. They're tainted.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And not just figuratively, but yeah. Anyway, the Indian government now refers to those formerly known as the untouchables and Dalits as the scheduled caste, as I mentioned, for the most part. Dalits, a lot of people have taken over though, claimed Dalit as a term of, empowerment, folks from that group. But anyway, according to Pandit Satish K. Sharma that I mentioned in that book, the concept of caste is not indigenous to India, but it was instead imposed upon the Indian people by their occupiers, the British Raj, as a means of dividing and conquering India. The word caste, and I did tell you this, I recall this, it first appears in the mid-16th century, mid-16th century Europe, meaning in general race or breed as adapted from the Spanish and Portuguese word casta. Now, modern day caste is defined as having these attributes, which John alluded to. It's something that it's hierarchical, it's endogamous, which means you marry your own kind, and hereditary. So hereditary meaning, I guess you inherit it from your parents, like John was saying, at least that's the perception, right? But when we think about those notions, that is how, certainly at the time in the 19th century and before, British social structure was, European social structure was, right? You had the aristocrats, you had the, all the way down to the peasants. You did have these different stratifications, and folks it was hierarchical, it was endogamous, hope I'm saying that right, in hereditary. Anyway, but according to Pandit Sharma, there is no equivalent of that concept or that word caste in Hindu scripture. Instead, they have this thing that's referred to as Varna. And Varna, many non-Hindus like ourselves, Western folks, conflate this with caste. But Varna is a Sanskrit word that means type, order, class. And it comes from this, from the Bhagavad Gita, which is, the core of Hindu scripture, where Sri Krishna says that he created 4 variations of people: the intellectual folks, the warriors, the traders, and the laborers. But there's no connection in the Gita that talks about hereditary hierarchy or endogamy. Endogamy, I'm trying to say it differently.
Yeah, conjugate that weird word. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the point that this author makes, which is like what John was saying, is historically in India, as in most other places in the world, children often follow in the footsteps of their elders. And it's also often true that, younger folks may just inherently reflect the values of their larger families or communities, but they don't necessarily.
Right.
And they may outgrow them. So, but what the British did was, by observing this Varna, which was sort of a natural sort of evolution of different groups in India that just took to different professions or different areas of society, and they imposed this concept of caste, saying that Indians were born into certain things and they had to be it. So just by your nature of lineage, you're the upper class, all the way down to Dalits, who are not even considered in the 4 types of people that the Gita mentions.
So if I could refocus this back to, not that we're not talking about your book, but focus back on the actual work that you're putting into the book.
Yeah.
We just spent 20 very fascinating minutes talking about, kind of the nuances, the connotation, all this kind of stuff, how it's come to America, which, is very pertinent to your novel. How do you as an author determine this is not a document of how these things got there? So you have this line to walk where for someone that understands this caste system, you need to make sure you're true to it and refer to it and follow it. But for a reader who's dummy John, who grew up in the woods in Florida, doesn't know anything about that, you need to convey to him what that stuff is about without it sounding like a lesson.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like a razor to walk, and to go, I want to make sure I serve these people, but don't underserve or overserve the other group that might or might not understand it fully.
Yeah. You're right. And you're 100% right. And so what it does result in, obviously it's got to be expository in some way. So the trick, I guess, is when you're trying to hold people's interest, is not making it seem like strictly done for the sake of exposition.
So, cue the flashback.
Well, for example, this, for right now, the brief explanation, I'm telling you all the stuff that winds up being like 2 sentences in a book. The reason why I even care about this is, this is spoiler. Hopefully folks will read my book, even though that I'm telling you a lot of these different twists and revelations, is the mother character that I mentioned. It was the Juliet in my analogy earlier, is from a political dynasty who fights for civil rights and winds up getting killed as she's part of one of these violent things. She's mistaken for a Dalit or someone who's, or she's seen as someone she's in the way of protecting a Dalit. She winds up getting killed. And so to be able to explain why they would even need to help, from other, I get into this idea of caste and Dalit. But you're right, John. I want to represent it. My goal is that an Indian person reads it and goes, okay, cool. I'm not offended.
Right.
Now I've had some younger Indian folks read it that are our age, and I think even by our generation, they might not even know all what I just told you. So to them it's even a little squishy. But so I put in America, and part of what I'm trying to draw in my story is an analogy that, like, it's easy for Westerners to dismiss maybe these things as, and part of that law, and part of what the British did was said, they talked about so again, they sort of imposed this caste system. They say it's rigid. Look, and they vilify Indians as a result of it. Look what they do. If you're born into a poor family, you have to stay poor. And the British government did that to, again, divide and conquer, but also the Church of England, again, according to Sharma, used it as, I don't want to do a repeat of last week, but, use it as pretext to be able to convert a bunch of non-Christians. So you have reverends, is proselytizing the right word? They're doing these fiery sermons about attention all Indians, attention and Hindus. You have this horrible system, the caste system, that's keeping you down. You're born into this low class. You got to stay there. No, let me tell you about our church. So this is what, and if you look again, I wrote off the other guy as maybe being, not being entirely of a sort of a philosophy, maybe a political philosophy that I adhere to. But this gentleman, and he likes this author, and this author of this book, actually, this gentleman, Pandit Satish K. Sharma, he spoke at one of these rallies against that law I told you about. But this author, as evidence that what the British did, in particular with this caste system, and their hand in creating the Dalits that I told you about, he cites this 1871 law that the British government enacted. Again, they're occupying, controlling India in 1871. They enact the Criminal Tribes Act, which Sharma writes labeled whole Indian communities as guilty at birth. At the time, British parliamentarian Lord James Fitzjames Stephen, which sounds like a made-up name, noted, quote, "When we speak of professional criminals, we mean a tribe whose ancestors were criminals from time immemorial, who are themselves destined by the usage of caste to commit crime, and whose descendants will be offenders against law until the whole tribe is exterminated."
Oh my gosh.
Sieg Heil.
As a result
Indeed.
of passing this, absolutely, 100%. And as a result of this act, they gained immense powers over these people, these downtrodden people. So they defined them as downtrodden, said, "Oh, your horrible Indian community, brothers are keeping you, sisters are keeping you down." And by the way, because you were just destined to be an awful person, according to your own culture, now we have power over you to monitor you, to tell you where you can live, where you can travel. You have to register. Yeah, it's very Third Reich.
So I can protect you from yourself and the rest of the world from you. It's justified. Yeah.
Right.
Well, after 75 years later, so the British occupied India for almost 90 years, 89 years. But 75 years after this law is passed, India finally gets independence. But generations of Indians now have been born into and grown up with this idea that a certain group within them is, by birth, tainted.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so inevitably it's going to affect how they feel about them. And that's where we get the untouchables, which ultimately we call the Dalits, and now the schedule castes. Anyway, that's all I want to say about that, Cat.
Specifically.
So I do have I tell you all that to tell you this. So I just do it like this. I wanted to again show how in America we've had these challenges too. We have people born into poverty that are destined to be in poverty, and not by family, but by societal structure. And we have our own, you can go look again, this is me now. Folks who are on one side of the political aisle versus mine, they're tuning out if they haven't, they're never listening again. That's fine. But like one of the things that guy I mentioned that said that Equity Labs is suspicious. One of the things he also cited was, and they're mentioning critical race theory too. Now look, first of all, if you're of the conservative mind, you already automatically think that's conservative. Critical race theory is bad. Tell me what it is. I guarantee you don't know.
Exactly.
Well, really what it comes down to is some bullshit name made up by somebody who is just trying to gin up votes. Because it's not a real thing that's happening. But what it comes down to, critical race theory, at least the idea as it's pitched, is knowing enough history to understand how, as a society, now I'm talking about America in this instance, may influence, affect how one group is ultimately treated, and therefore, all the things that. So in our country, as a result of slavery for hundreds of years,
not a short time.
The Civil War ended in 1865. We didn't have the Civil Rights Act till 1964, 100 years later. So of course there's going to be, just like with the Dalits, in 75 years, they're now thought of even by their own as maybe untouchable. Of course there's results here. So in my book, I try to make some parallels to that idea that they move from this one place that has this communal violence. The father thinks, hey, me and my kid are going to be safe now. But again, this is based on a true story. Guess what? This particular area in New Jersey where I grew up, Indians are great in number. I think second only to one other city in New Jersey at the time. And by some portion of the city, they are hated. They are targeted. And so, John, to your earlier question, I do have one character who's a community organizer, Indian, trying to rally up people to fight against these, explaining to the father who just moved there, we have this group, we're getting together, and the father's like, hey, we're in America, I don't want any part of this, we're good, we got cops here.
Right.
He explains to him briefly, in how in India, the British created the caste and made the Dalits, right? You know that story about how that works?
All right.
He says it to the one guy. Yeah. Okay. Well, here in America, we're all Dalits. That's basically how it's exposited.
Ouchie.
Anyway, all right, there you go, Kat. Go take a nap or go to bed. John, get something to eat. Kat, go to bed. You're off the readers list. You're off the readers list. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's late and it's heavy stuff.
I can't wait to hear it again. Like when I'm
Kat, I'll be honest with you.
when I'm more awake.
My test of if I think an episode's good is if I want to listen to it again. I probably won't listen to the second half of this one. I'm not lying to you. I'm not lying.
You know what?
Yep.
It's just the sound of your voice was so soothing.
Yeah,
So soothing.
It was just
It's like
so.
your voice is like a pair of pants tucked in socks. It's so comfortable.
Yes.
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 So before we wrap up the episode,
Yeah.
it's time to play Ding, how's Will doing?
Yeah.
Get your
So-
spreadsheet out.
We last spoke. We 2 weeks ago we didn't have this conversation. We missed a week, so that was week 44. So the last time we talked about this was week 42. Now you remember we were trying to, for those just tuning in, we're trying to accomplish encouraging Will to complete his book by the end of the calendar year, and it's not us imposing this upon him. That is his goal, and we're trying to help get him there. Right.
And I want yes.
So when we spoke, you were actually running a little behind. We'd estimate you need about 2% of completion every 2 weeks, so about 1% a week. And when we talked back in mid-October, you should have been at about 89% complete. And you said, I'm about a point and a half behind. I'm about, 87.5%. Well, and I mentioned to you then, well, keep in mind, when you fall behind, it's not enough to resume your previous velocity. You've got to compensate for the time you've lost. So knowing that now 4 weeks ago, effectively, you were at 87.5%, and the end of the year, we're trying to get to 100. I know the number that is your par where you need to be. Do you have a feeling of where you are now on a percentage scale?
I do. And it's based, and gratefully, I had those couple of setbacks a couple of weeks ago, and it launched me into this sort of research that slowed me down. But really coming out of that and learning what I did, it led me to make some decisions about my story to navigate these things in a way that I got more accomplished than I would have otherwise, I think. And so I think I'm around 90% now. Yeah,
Where are you?
I think I'm about 90%. Because
It's like Ecto 1 coming out of the firehouse in the new movie.
once I had, what is a lot of writing is, especially when you're having to research stuff is, until you have a vision or clarity or understanding, it's you're slogging away and you're writing stuff you're going to toss out. But I had so clear in my mind how I was going to solve these couple of problems that it just sort of came out.
Okay.
So I think about 90%.
Do you have a feeling of where you think par should be? Because I do.
I don't. I haven't been. I'm relying on you to tell me.
Yeah. Okay. So based on the vector that we had you on, you should today be at 93%.
Oh, geez Louise. It's awful.
Well, just keep in mind, you were behind 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We didn't speak last week.
Yeah.
So that was in subsequent 2 more percent, right? So at this moment, even though you've gotten some new velocity behind you, you are further behind the curve than you were a month ago. I don't say that to discourage you, obviously.
Yeah.
I say it as a reality check that if you don't know where you are, you don't know how to adjust course. So, whether it's adjusting your deliverable date, whether it's modifying how you get there, whether it's making some concessions, I think it's important to keep that in mind as you push forward and go, look, if I really want to hit this date, I have to figure out how I can do that or change a variable somewhere.
What I'm hopeful may happen is, because I do this, I don't know if you do this with your work, is anticipate it being more difficult than it really is. Putting the bar out there.
Sure, that's fine.
Right now, I'm working on the hardest stuff in the sense that I'm having to create new material. I have one other story I want to write that's brand new. It's probably short, maybe a couple of pages. And then what I'm diving into is cutting some stuff and smoothing stuff over. And I think that as a result will go a lot faster because I'm just working on.
You feel like
I'm just rewriting.
The tail end few percentile you think will go at a faster pace because it's not whole cloth generation. It's editing and tweaking. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
So I think I got another week or another 2 weeks or whatever of writing some new stuff and being done with it. And then, I think maybe December.
Okay.
It go a lot more quickly.
Yeah. Well, the next time we'll do a check-in is the end of this month. So another couple of weeks right after Thanksgiving. So we'll see where you're at.
Right.
Cool. Oh, and speaking of Thanksgiving, this episode came out the week of Thanksgiving.
Oh,
Yes.
happy Thanksgiving.
So I think we should thank everybody, Kat. Do you need everybody?
I think we should thank everybody, including our early adopters like Rick Parker and Karen Flieger.
And
Karen.
in the sense, look, and when thinking about thanking everybody, let's thank everybody that even helped us throughout the whole year here, including Kathy Burke. And people and people that
Throughout the
continue
year.
to help us that maybe we don't mention just because the tier they're at. Craig Anderson, Jillian Perry, Nate Wallace, and some anonymous person.
Oh. Way to go, Anonymous. Get it.
Also, thank you to our Secret of Our Success level Patreon supporters like Nick Guillory, Craig Coletta,
Oh, man.
Matt Marino,
Ow.
John Henderson,
Another John.
Brendan Greer,
Get it.
Marcus Taylor,
Boy.
and Tony Great.
Great.
Yeah, and along those lines, I'm thanking everybody. Also, thanks to Brad Bowman,
Yes.
who also helped us get through the year 2023, which we're not quite at the end of, but
Brad.
we're getting there. Yeah. All right. Hey, everybody have a great Thanksgiving. We will talk to you next time on 1980s Now.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.